today is that our wages have increased 2x in his lifetime, but housing prices, well, they've increased by 9x in his lifetime. And so you cannot really afford the same things that the previous generation thought of as totally normal. And so their construct might not work for our generation. So one, I think it's important to realize that it is hard out there. Second, though, is I think we got to go back to what Warren Buffett says, which is be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. And it's really hard to do. It hurts in our gut. But today, all around us, things are starting to go on sale. And what we have to try to do is figure out during this time period, how can I start to get a little piece of it? Housing prices in Austin are down 30%. This is really just since I bought a house a year ago. And so there is actually sales happening all around us, and I think we got to be prepared for it. But before we can buy things, we got to have enough money to do it, and we got to kind of know a little bit about money in order to make more of it. So I think we should talk about too. Yes, it's hard right now. Yes, things are on sale. You are not crazy, but you can make money in any market. And one of my favorite quotes from Baron Rothschild, one of the richest guys in the world, creator of industry in the US, is buy when there's blood in the streets, even and especially when the blood is your own. And so that is a hard visual way to realize that actually real money is made when the market feels tough.
Yeah, so actually right now, even though the market is tough, we shouldn't be discouraged and waiting for the market to be good. This should be the time that we actually double down and listen to your advice.
Yeah, I mean, think about, I was looking at an NFT yesterday that was sold for $60 million in the height of the NFT land. It is worth $19,000 today. $60 million to $19,000. It felt good during that time, didn't it? Everybody was like, we're making money. We've got all this extra stuff. But what actually happened is we bought things at overpriced assets, and now we're left with assets that are underpriced. The opposite happens in this market. And so right now is the time, I think, to put up your little spidey sense and start saying, well, everybody else is panicking. Where can I start to make some smart moves? Because there's always money and opportunities, but definitely you want to buy when things are on sale.
Should people even be dreaming or thinking about wanting to own a home anymore?
I think that owning a home as an investment right now today is mathematically not a smart decision. For the first time in my lifetime, the numbers say that homes today, well, you have an interest rate of 5 to 8%. You have a 3 million home shortage in the US. You have flat wages, and you have this increase of home prices. The math just isn't mathing. And so today, I don't think you should feel like you're not an adult. You don't live the American dream. You're a failure if you don't buy a house. You might actually just be really financially intelligent. Rent and go negotiate your rent prices right now, by the way, because there's a lot of excess in the market and they want to keep you. And you might actually be making an incredibly smart financial decision. And so don't let people make you feel bad if you're not doing what the American dream adult thing used to be. The market's changed.
Yeah, you've already shared some really powerful advice for right now. Like even the idea that now's a great time to go and negotiate your rent. Now's a great time to go and think about finding places to potentially purchase property if you are.
Yep.
What should be people thinking about doing right now when it comes to making money that you couldn't have been doing a year ago that's very different now?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, first, what I would think about today is I think you got to first understand some baseline financial literacy. And you and I were talking about this. They say the average American reads at a 6th grade reading level. They say the average American actually understands finances at about a high school level. So we're taught, and you remember this in high school, we're taught all the way up to budgeting. Like back in our day, probably the kids don't do it this way anymore, but you used to have checkbooks. Right now everybody knows how old I was, and you have to balance your checkbook. And how do you do that? A little ledger. That's actually where we're capped. And so I think first what I want people to do is realize that if you don't understand money, you're never going to make more of it, because understanding money is like speaking a language. How are you going to speak to somebody in Spanish and communicate and win at that relationship if you guys don't speak the same language? It's very hard, right? So I want people to speak the language of money. So I think about this in small ways. Let me tell you one way to know if you're financially literate today. One way might be, do you really understand the difference between debit and credit cards and why you should really never be using debit cards? Everybody talks these days about how credit cards are bad, right? Well, credit cards are bad if you don't pay off your payment every single month, if you allow big interest rates to stockpile, and if you use it as a I want things as opposed to I need things. Credit cards are bad. But debit cards are actually worse. They don't allow you to build credit, and credit, good credit in this country, is the underpinning of wealth. Debit cards do not allow that. They also don't give you any points or perks or cash back, and then you're less protected actually with a debit card. So if somebody steals your debit card and goes and charges things, the bank goes, I don't know, that's your money, don't really care. If you go and you charge a bunch of things on your credit card and there's fraud, what do? 2 clicks, they erase it, right? They ship you a new card. And so I think this generation was so tormented by credit is bad, debt is bad, don't have it. Well, the people who are the richest in the world, they all have some debt, just good debt as opposed to bad debt. So where I want you guys to start is actually before you even think of making more money, let's understand the language of money, right?
I'm so glad we're starting there. It's brilliant. And I had personal experience of this. So I grew up in London where it's not the same setup.
Yeah.
Similar, but it's not exactly the same. The whole structure is not based on credit as strongly.
The debit card. So if somebody steals your debit card and goes and charges things, the bank goes, I don't know, that's your money, don't really care. If you go and you charge a bunch of things on your credit card and there's fraud, what do? 2 clicks, they erase it, right? They ship you a new card. And so I think this generation was so tormented by credit is bad, debt is bad, don't have it. Well, the people who are the richest in the world, they all have some debt, just good debt as opposed to bad debt. So where I want you guys to start is actually before you even think of making more money, let's understand the language of money, right?
I'm so glad we're starting there. It's brilliant. And I had personal experience of this. So I grew up in London where it's not the same setup.
Yeah.
Similar, but it's not exactly the same. The whole structure is not based on credit as strongly. And I was trained to believe you only use a debit card. And so I used that my whole life. When I came to the US and I moved here, for the first year I lived here, I only lived, and I didn't have a lot of money, so I was living just on a debit card. And then when I wanted to finally get a car, I was thinking about, having an apartment, whatever it was, I couldn't get anything because I had no credit score. My credit score was like non-existent. And it hit me like a ton of bricks because I couldn't believe it that I'd finally done good with my life, but I couldn't actually exercise any of it. So walk me through the myths about credit cards and debit cards that people can solve right now. Is there a special credit card they should be getting?
Yeah.
Is there one that's better? What should they be looking out for? What does APR mean? Walk me through the hidden things behind credit cards that we all feel stupid about when you see an ad and you're like, I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, it's so true. I had an employee, actually, Christian, who's from the UK too. And we were ridiculing him mercilessly, actually, because he only had a debit card to pay for things. And I didn't even know that the UK was completely different.
No, there are credit cards, but it's not.
He said it's not normal. Yeah. I was like, you're a 28-year-old man and you don't have a credit card? And he was like, you need to travel more, Codie. And I was like, sorry. But then we got him a credit card so he could start establishing credit here. But moral of the story is, here's, I think, the couple first steps to financial freedom. If you want to set up your kid for success, you actually want them to get a credit card really early. Doesn't so much matter what type of credit card. I'm not like the points guy where I like to operationalize and optimize every aspect of a credit card. I think that is almost more work than trying to make more money. But I think if you go from any of the major banks, there are a lot of rules around credit cards, so they're really not allowed to mess with you so much on interest rates. There's a lot of protections for consumers, so don't stress too much about which one. Which one seems like it has some nice perks for you, and you can get the most amount of money that you need. Cool. So that's step one. And if you can do that for your kids when they're in high school, they will actually have more access to the first pillar, I think, of wealth, which is resources. We all know what's the saying? It takes money to make money, right? And so if you come from nothing, well, you can start actually building up your resource pile just from your credit, which you can start at a young age. You don't need to be rich to do that. And then after resources, you pile on knowledge, right? The rich pass on how to invest. We need to start doing that to our next generation. Then you pass on wealth accumulation. That's where you start to pile on your own money. And then finally, you pass on, the ability to invest, to continue to move cyclically your money around and make it work for you. But that's where I would start. It's like you start with a credit card. You have a debit card really just because you want to get cash out sometimes if you're going to the club and buying drinks or whatever people do these days that are cooler than me. And that's where I would start. And then I would move to this next level of, okay, if I have some credit, Now we need to focus on earning. So how do I make more money? And but I think most people skip that first step because credit is scary. And like, listen, Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, obviously very famous dude, but he has a line I love, which is men only go broke by three things. And it's whiskey, women, and leverage. And leverage means debt, right? Warren Buffett gave him a little adage to it at the end. And he goes, I think actually what my friend meant to say was it's really just the last one. It's really just leverage. And Warren Buffett, one of the richest guys in the world, said he doesn't like debt. But here's the problem, Jay. He's highly levered. He has a massive amount of debt. Why? Because he has debt on assets and other people's things as opposed to personal guarantees on his own. He's not mortgaging his house to buy these companies. He is raising debt on a company in order for it to make more money. And so if you don't understand all that right now, that's where I want you to dive in a little bit more. But you can start with a debit and a credit card.
Yeah, no, I think it's so important to understand debt. And you see that when you see a celebrity buy a new home and you realize they borrowed to buy that home. They didn't buy it in cash, even though they have the cash and it's available to them. And I think that idea is so if someone's thinking about starting a business right now or wants to grow a business, and the number one thing you hear is, well, I don't have any money, I don't know how to fund it. How much do you actually need to start a business?
I think you never suffer from a lack of money. You suffer from a lack of knowledge on how to get money. The richest people in the world, they never use their own money entirely to buy things. And if you can like sit on that for a second and let that sit in, then I think you can really open up your eyes to the fact that all around you, there are deals right now. And there is money that is waiting for the actually rarest of things, which is a human who wants to work really hard and has a good idea where to put the money. And so you actually don't need money to start a business. I don't think you need it at all. What you need is some access to it. And so, next week I'm going to the SBA, the Small Business Administration, and they just ran out all of these new programs for new business owners where they will, one, do grants where they give you money. A grant means you take this money, you don't have to give it back. The government is going to give it to you, maybe because you're a minority or a woman or have a core needs business. They also do a ton of loans. They'll loan you 90% of the purchase price of a business if you need one. And all around us are also people who want to invest. And so there's a website called Percent. And on Percent, if you have a small business and you need some debt for a small business, you can actually get debt from your small business through a website. But I think the most important part is not just tactically. It's can I change my belief to believe that money is all around me? And I do not need to have only my own money in order to get rich. And I want more people to think that way. It's hard. I get it.
Do you think everyone needs a side hustle right now?
I have two thoughts. One, I do not believe that you have to go all in on the thing that you want to do in life. I think that is told to you by people who had survivorship bias. It worked for me, so it's going to work for you. And what do we know to be true? 90% of startups fail over any 5-year period. And so I actually think that the way to never have risk in building a business, if you want to do a startup and have no risk, I think you keep your job. You do really well at that job while you're doing it. You use your salary to fund your side hustle or your next venture. You keep moving forward on it until your side hustle matches the cost of living that you have, your cash flow, and then you leave your business or your job to go start your business once you have enough money from inflow of the business. And I think we've told too many people and idealized this idea of entrepreneurship when in fact, I had 3 or 4 businesses fail. If I had just left my job that paid me good money, I would have been sleeping on somebody's couch. And so you can have a side hustle, but please keep it on the side for a minute until you make sure it's not just a passion project, it is a profit project.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's the smartest, wisest advice. I'm in the same boat. Yeah. When I started doing what I do today, I had a full-time job. It didn't pay great, but it paid enough to get by. It paid my bills. It means I wasn't creating from a place of stress. And when you're creating something new from just stress, it can be quite debilitating. Now, sometimes stress can be the greatest motivator. It can propel you. It can be your launch pad, but you got to kind of get it right. Too much stress and you fall apart. Too little stress and you stay in the golden handcuffs.
That's right.
And I think that's where I see a lot of people stuck today is I meet a lot of people who I feel have tied on the golden handcuffs, but not using that as the investment. So it's I want to have a lifestyle with the money I make, I don't want to use it to build a new life.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, I mean, and there's a lot of data out there that actually backs that. There was a study that was done on should you leave your job to do a startup or should you stay in your job and do your startup at the side? And what the data tells us from hundreds of individuals that went through this is you have a 33% higher likelihood of your startup succeeding if you have an income source while you're doing it. Because we make better decisions when we're not in flight or fight, when we can actually sort of downregulate. You know all about this. Thankfully, there's so many tools like What You Do that teach people how to downregulate, and sometimes you can't control it. But if you can control that your decision making is better by keeping an income source, oh my gosh, why wouldn't you? Because being a CEO is really, in my opinion, it's like three things. If you want to be a great CEO, it is number one, you have to be able to sell a dream so big that other talent wants to come alongside you. They think that their vision is bigger under yours. Then number two, you have to make great diagnoses. What's happening in the world around us, just like a doctor would, to understand what's good or bad. And then you have to have great decision making on top of the diagnoses. And so if you can hire great talent, diagnose well, but you make bad decisions because you're scared, that's not going to lead to a successful startup, in my experience.
I love those top three qualities of a CEO. I wanted to ask you the opposite. What allows an employee to be great and make more money as an employee?
If you want to make more money as an employee, number one, you have to understand how much money you make the company today. If you don't understand what your value, dollar amount is you bring into your business, you should probably go talk to your boss and say, hey, I'd like to understand how I make you money. If you had to quantify how I make you money, could you help me understand that? One, your boss is going to be like, this is amazing. Nobody's ever asked me this before. And then two, once you understand that, you need to figure out how could I make more money for the company? Once you can understand how you can make more money, you can say, well, what do you think the profits of this business are? If we bring in $100 sale, do we keep $20 of it? And if I figure that out, then I can go, okay, I made you $100. We kept 20 of it. If I do that, could I keep 5 of that 20 I brought you? And then you actually know how to negotiate for your salary. And a lot of times this isn't always possible if you're in a big corporate job, but more often than not, there is money available for those who understand how to ask for it because they've earned it.
I love that. That step-by-step process is so brilliant because you're so right. If someone ever came up to me and said, how do I make money? And how do I make you more money?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's like the best thing ever because it's so often not thought about and you don't realize. And like you said, there may be certain companies where you can't have that conversation, but today I feel like there's just so many more spaces to actually have that connection.
That you can. Yeah. And, and think about it from your boss's perspective. Like they hired you for a reason because they thought that you would make their life easier and that you would make the business better. And I think a lot of times you leave your job before you get all of the money out of your job you could have. And I did this so often in the beginning. I think you'd make way more money if you thought that you could have a conversation with your boss and say, man, this isn't exactly working how I thought it would be. I think I could be of use over here as well. I'd love some additional responsibility here, maybe less here. Could I make you more money over here? If I prove myself here, could we do less here? You leave the devil that you know for the devil that you don't often. And when that happens, I think you actually lose more money than you anticipate. It used to be back in the day, you made about 20 to 25% more money every time you job hopped to the next job. These days, I actually think that there is a real value you can have to increase your salary or overall pay by more like 25 to 50% if you stay and you diagnose as opposed to you skip and then you guess.
Yes.
And so I would highly recommend that you not do what I did at the beginning of my career, which was skip, and never give the place a chance to pay me more.
Yeah.
Because they might want to.
Absolutely. And what you miss when you skip is you actually miss the skills of negotiating, up managing, learning new skills and abilities at that place. You're so right. And it's so, you're so vulnerable for even saying that because, you've done so phenomenally well. But it's such a good lesson for people to understand because in the carrot of a couple of extra, whatever it may be, you're moving across, but you're actually losing the skills. One thing I painted up recently, which I haven't fully presented to my team yet, but it's been something I've been putting together for how, and I know you have something on this too, so I want to share mine with you to get your thoughts on it. I've been building this framework of how to talk to my team about what helps you grow at the company. Yeah. And I used a very, very simple analogy and metaphor of beginning at the bricklayer. So the bricklayer is usually at the level with which you come in, and the bricklayer knows I have to lay this brick and I've got to lay it next to this one, and I know the pattern and I can lay a brick, and maybe I can build a wall, maybe. The next level up is a builder. You actually know how to build a wall, you know how to paint the wall, you know how to put up scaffolding, you know how to connect walls, you can do a bit more, and you're a builder. Above from that is something I call the architect. Now, the architect is not just good at building a wall, they could actually go and build me and design me a new part of the business, an extension of something, a new idea. And that's how I want people to grow. And then the highest stage that I've come to is the city planner. This person's not just building me one home, they're planning the whole city of the ecosystem of how everything falls into place. And so I'm communicating this to my team now because I'm like, I want all of you to graduate from bricklayers to builders to architects to city planners. Yeah. And that is what's attached to more money. It's not more effort. It's not more work. Yeah. It's not being more busy. Yeah. It's not doing more stuff. These all come with a different type of vision. They come with a different strategic element. They come with more care. They come with a wider scope. It isn't just about, oh, but I worked more hours this year, or I put in more time. Didn't you see how much effort I put in? And I think those things don't necessarily result in more success for a company. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's perfect. One, we all want to feel like we can see a future at an organization. And I think we all want to make money, but we also really want to know that we're getting better. And we want to know that we're going to get rewarded for all the hard work we're going to put in over the long term. And so if you can show people a vision for the future, I think that's incredible. I totally agree. We also talk about it as, and this isn't quite the same because a bricklayer is in many ways just as important as the city planner. And so one other way we talk about it is called the NPC ladder. And we sort of talk about, how there are video games, right? And in the video games, you have the NPCs, which are sort of these people that sort of stay in the same spot and repeat the same things, like, find the dragon, find the dragon. And some people choose to kind of stay in the same spot and to stay as an NPC for much of their life and not to move to each level of the game where you become not the main character next, you're a supporting cast member, and then you might be one of the main characters and then you might be the protagonist, etc. And so at the very top of my best performers, where I say the people who will be paid the most, maybe eventually get equity, well, they're the main characters. And that means that they actually change the script. They move forward the company overall. And so I love that. And I think if for most of us, there's a saying that you don't leave bad jobs, you leave bad leaders. And so I like to try to remember that often in my companies, that when somebody leaves, that's a reflection on me and my team, that they didn't see a way for them to become a city planner and that they didn't see a way for them to come to the next level. I do think about that often.
It's almost like it's a validation of all of these are needed, but there's a ladder. Yeah. And the ladder isn't just more time and more work.
No.
Which often is the mistake.
Well, I think you're really right. I mean, today, I think there's a hustle culture that happens about hard work will equal wealth. And that is actually not true at all. And we have seen over time, if hard work would equal wealth, then the person who runs my laundromat would make just as much as Jeff Bezos. And we know, there's an incredible video out there that I can't remember who did it, but it basically shows for the 60 seconds that Jeff Bezos is in the video, how much money Jeff Bezos is making every single second as he walks around the factory. And it shows that he makes, let's say, I don't know, X millions of dollars per second. And so by the time my laundromat owner has picked up his coffee, put it in his mouth, Jeff Bezos has already lapped him multiple times for the year. Now, why? Jeff doesn't work as hard as the guy who's laying actual bricks or actually cleaning the roof. And so I think we have to ask ourselves if this idea of just work harder, what's your work ethic? That's not true anymore, especially in the age of AI. The more I think about AI as a total normie, I'm not a big tech person. I'm almost like boomer incapable in many ways with tech. But the more I think about it, the more I think it will enable all of us to have massive knowledge And because we'll all have massive knowledge, we will actually have to perform better because everybody will be able to do a mid-level execution. Very few people will be able to stand out amongst the noise. And we're already seeing this 47% increase in creators just this year online. So why? Because it's so much easier now to go bang, bam, boom, put it on the internet. So that's going to be everywhere, which means that going forward, just doing a lot more, just working a lot harder won't be what changes it. What will? Taking a moment to look at what do I know different than anybody else? How do I increase my knowledge stack? And how do I get really creative in a world of lack of creativity, but mass production? And so I loved Naval Ravikant's line, which was, in this world today, you don't want to work like a cow. You don't want to work continuously sort of grazing nonstop like this. You want to be the lion. You want to have periods of sprint and rest. Sprint and rest. And that will be what the top performers do.
Yeah, absolutely. So well said. Is passive income a myth?
Well, passive income is a tax statement. So like the actual words passive income versus active income are real per the government. But is passive income in the fact that I will make money if I do nothing and I take X amount of risk and X amount of my money in order to do something? No, that's a total lie. And I think anybody who tells you that this will be completely passive income, there's a red flag, immediate red flag. I mean, I own a bunch of vending machines. Vending machines are often something people call passive income. Let me tell you what's not passive, a vending machine. They break all the time. People break into them. They don't make that much money per machine. And also, they make a ton of money on aggregate. And they're great for many things once you have hundreds of them or thousands. But there's no such thing as passive income. And once you know that, I think you also can recognize, like, do you want passive income? Is that what you really want? Or do you just want a job that you love, that pays you well, that like lights that fire inside of you? I think we want passive income because we hate what we do. Because 87% of Americans don't like what they do for a living. They don't like who they work with. And so why would they want to do more of it? Please give me passive income. But I don't think that's actually what we want. We just want something that really speaks to us.
Is that a genuine pursuit? Like, do you think people can do what they love and make a lot of money? Or are those ideas disconnected?
I think that anybody tells you you should follow your passion in order to make money is probably already rich. And it sounds really nice, actually. And so they're like, of course, follow your passion. Well, even somebody like, we both know some of the founders of Airbnb. You're closer with them than I am. But like, Joe in Austin, he would say that he was incredibly passionate when he started Airbnb. But was he like passionate about, I don't know, home design of his mattress on the floor? Like, no, what was he passionate about? He found some game that he loved to play in the game of business. And it probably could have been a lighting company that he had, or a painting company, or Airbnb. He just learned to love the game. So where I think people get it wrong is learn to love the game. Don't try to obsess on your passions. We try to turn like painting that we do, or underwater basket weaving, or whatever our weird hobby is, into our profits. And that's where you go really, really wrong. And in fact, there's a lot of data to support this. I mean, we have something called the boring sexy matrix that essentially, it kind of looks like, 2 lines and then a charted graph that shows you the more boring the industry, the higher the income. And so especially in Hollywood, in fact, there's an incredible study that shows in SAG-AFTRA, the Hollywood union, there's 187,000 members of this union. And of those, more than 80% of them do not qualify for health insurance, which means that they don't make enough money to even qualify for health insurance. The average income is like $23,000 for an actor in LA. And so what does that tell you? When you want to try to be a Clooney, or you want to try to be, a famous Brad Pitt, most people make no money from it. You'd be way better off going to finance, where 99% of the people earn 100% of their income from their job, than in acting, in which it appears that less than 20% of people make their full income from this job. And I'm not like trying to dissuade anybody from doing things that you love. I might just be pushing you to even say, how could I be more creative about this?
Yeah.
If I love to act, where is there money around the world of acting that I could go grab and still integrate the two? But does it have to be this preordained sexy role? And I think the answer is no. You're a perfect example of it. That's how podcasts were born. You know, it was like these people who wanted to maybe have talk shows, who wanted to interview people. And we said we could do it here instead of a studio, and you changed an entire industry.
I wanted a talk show so bad. It's such a good example, and I love that. Yeah, that was, I grew up watching Oprah.
Yeah.
Big fan. And I was like, how cool would it be to sit down with people and to have a talk show and all the rest of it? And then you realize no one's giving you a talk show. And unless your talk show is really, really significant, no one's making any significant money. And no one's giving you a talk show. That's the reality of it. There's only ever like 3 daytime talk show hosts that are successful, and maybe 3 late night talk show hosts that are successful. And then everyone else, like you said, same as acting, 97% of people, 99% of people don't have that. And when you do what you love, so do I love interviewing? Yes, I do. But I love the distinction you made, because I think there's a difference between a hobby and a skill. So, and you just said it, you literally just said it. So I love soccer. Soccer is my first love. It's one of my favorite hobbies. I love talking about it. I like playing it. I like FIFA, like on the PlayStation, Xbox, whatever I'm in. If I tried to become a soccer player, it would never have happened. Like, I'm not good enough, not even close. And sure, I could have found a way to maybe get into coaching or maybe whatever. But to be honest, it's a hobby. It's something I love talking to my friends about. That doesn't have to be the thing that I monetize or that I build into my offering to the world. Yeah. And I love the difference, because I think when we hear the word passion, we confuse hobby for skills.
Yes.
And then you go, wait a minute, no, my hobby is painting. I'm not the best painter, let me be honest. And I think I've never heard someone say that before. Yeah. I've never heard that clear clarification. So thank you for making that crystal clear.
Yeah, it's really, I heard Michael Dell I think it was in Michael Dell's book. Yeah. He said somebody was asking him why he wanted to take his company back, because he had kind of had it pulled away from him. Him and another big investor basically got into the scuffle, and somebody was asking him, why do you still care about Dell? You're a billionaire many times over. You're super successful. Why don't you just let this go? And he says, I will care about this company after I am dead. He loves the game. He was so obsessed with Dell that you couldn't pry it out of his cold, dead hands. And I think about that often. I think, you couldn't make me retire no matter how much money you gave me. Why? Are there many days where the game of entrepreneurship is so brutal that I do think, what am I doing? I don't have to keep doing this. Why do I do it? But I love the game.
Yeah.
And I think if we can instill in more young people a love for the game, then they will realize that it is the most fun thing that you can do when you get a chance. Yeah. And that's also how you know if the thing you're doing is what you should be doing. Like famously, when the two Steves, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, were first starting out, they were at, I think it was Atari, the company that they were at. Anyway, they were at another tech company. And
it was Atari.
Yeah, it was. And Jobs, do you remember the story where Jobs said, the only way that I'm coming to work here is if I can sleep here too? And the founder, as a normal founder probably would do, was like, that's weird. No, you can't do that. But he realized that they were so good. They were so obsessed that their outperformance meant that he should let them be weird. And so he let them stay there, which was like a little problematic because I hear Steve was a little smelly. But like top performers are really just people who are obsessed with the game. It's not that you have to have crazy IQ. It's not that you have to have a crazy skill set. It's really hard to beat the compounding thing that is obsession. And I think that should open up for some people a realization that you could win. You could beat a Jay and a Codie if you're more obsessed with something than we are.
Oh, for sure. And what I've learned is that in order to love the game, you have to respect the rules.